For now, we stay within the topic of AI, at least in the sense of algorithms and automatic detection measures. Our next speaker is Rasmus Kjaergaard, who is CEO at Mindway AI. Mindway supplies innovative player monitoring and responsible gaming solutions to licensed gambling operators. Rasmus is here to tell us more about the role of technology in player protection and tailored responsible gaming interventions. Rasmus, please come to the stage, and I wish...
Thank you, Willem.
The floor is yours.
Thanks. It's there. It's there. Yeah, perfect. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. What better introduction could I have from Remy, Willem, and Gary Kasparov? First and foremost, actually, Willem saved me a little bit of my speaking time because Willem introduced Mindway AI. I'm Rasmus. I'm the CEO of Mindway AI. We are a company spin out of Aarhus University, very much scientific-based, and focusing on utilizing AI and neuroscience in detection of at-risk and problem gambling. We don't do anything else than that, so we are 100% focused on empowering you, the gambling industry in Netherlands and abroad, to enhance player protection with the solution and knowledge we built. We have come some way since we were founded a little more than 5 years ago. Today we have software running in roughly 40 jurisdictions in 4 continents. A couple of weeks ago we added Australia as the 4th one, and our game scanner, which I'm going to talk about today, is currently detecting 6.5 million active players a month. So, the challenges we meet when we speak with gambling companies globally and in Netherlands as well is how actually the current detection is done, because what I mainly meet is industry people sincerely willing to take care of the very few percentage of the customer database who show signs of problems. But in what we often see is that the challenges come with insufficient tools available for the employees. So one of the 3 main challenges we see is what exactly is it that is detected. First and foremost, most often detection is focused around the monetary bits, the money, the affordability, the money spent, and as well as time spent. But what about the rest of gambling behavioral detection? What about the rest of the behavioral picture? We also very often see when we meet AI algorithms that quite often they are built based on best effort maybe some years ago, but unfortunately very often based on unclear targets like self-exclusion or self-assessments. Self-exclusion and self-assessment, self-test, we are a provider of self-test as well, as you may know, in particular here in Holland. But we see those as insufficient, or we have found in our research as insufficient targets for algorithms, because, for instance, 25% roughly of all questions in PDSI questionnaires are misinterpreted, not honestly answered, research have shown. And on self-exclusion, roughly only 20% of all problem gamblers are actually using self-exclusion. So, and what also was confirmed earlier today, problematic gambling behavior is an individual matter. So does it really make sense to try to define a risk group based on arbitrary, potentially arbitrary thresholds? And what about all the dynamics between a lot of different risk markers in such groups? So we think, and that is actually what we have invented in our game scanner solution, where we combine AI with human expert assessments, that we have to focus on a more individual player level and combine the expert assessment with the strength of AI algorithms in finding patterns, finding dynamics between a lot of different variables. So what we provide is the solution where we, with this strong target of the human psychologist assessment we build into the algorithm, we with a high accuracy, replicate into the algorithm every time it is run, provide a sophisticated reporting and decision-making support to operators, giving us the opportunity to do a much more individualized detection than the typical risk group threshold-based approach. In this simple example, we see on the left, an example of the risk group definition based with thresholds, where we see on the right side a simple example of a more individualized detection. And for gambling operators, if we look into the 4 customers in this simple example in down right, we see that actually only one of the 4 red on the left example is actually red in the right example, showing that is a high-risk customer. However, one of the green ones would actually, in the threshold example, have had the high-risk intervention, even though the customer is not necessarily showing signs of risk. And in the comparison, all the customers falling outside of the risk group, all the ones in green that are not on the left example, that are not green on the right example, are the tricky ones for operators, because obviously that's the false negatives that we would not find in the threshold-based approach, but in the game scanner approach. So, to show you a little bit more about how this can be utilized. Here is 3 specific cases from our game scanner detection. The first case is unfortunately a typical, quite severe case, or a high-risk customer, 45-year-old female with a net loss of 10,000 euros in 92 days. So the overall risk score is shown on the left, and we see a player profile where we evaluate day by day the specific detected gambling behavior on this customer. So we calculate the overall risk score, determining the overall risk and aggregated risk level of each customer in the customer database, and that can be from a few thousands to more to millions of customers. And on each of these different risk factors, which are occasionally recalibrated with our experts as well, we also do calculate a risk score on each of them. These factors we think are very important, also to get a more broader definition of. So that's why we have invited ourselves, I would say, to be part of the current standardization project of markers of harm, initiated by EGBA and Martin Heyer, but now in the hands of the CEN European standardization body. So we are, to my understanding, the only player protection solution provider involved in that project. That was a side comment. So what we detect here is, what you see here is these 12 to 14 different risk factors. Underneath those, we detect roughly 150 different points aggregating into this player profile. So in this case, unfortunately, this is a matter of overall consumption, loss chasing, number of deposits, time of day, and so on. There's a lot going on here. So in a slightly different example, here you actually see the development of a player profile here. So actually this is a recording with a time slider from our software. So on each and every customer you have in your customer database, you are able to travel back and forth in time. And the whole idea, seen from our perspective, is fluctuating wagers. The one out in the far left is actually is considered a marker of something that may involve earlier on to be problematic. So in this example, imagine if we were able to do a meaningful individualized intervention, automated, based on the customer-specific situation. Maybe we could have nudged the customer to a much more sustainable level, In this particular example, we see when you're going, in our system, when you go from yellow to orange, you go from medium to high risk. And that is exactly kind of where the window of opportunity of nudging a player is start closing. So if we were able to do messaging earlier, that would be an opportunity to change at least some of our customers' behaviors. Another example, here we have a 21-year-old male, typical vulnerable group as widely recognized. However, in this case, the net loss is not necessarily big. So that's an example that you actually can be in trouble even though you could afford it. Again, we see a lot of different spikes in terms of the consumption and the behavioral loss chasing and so on. So what is interesting in this case is actually that the customer was identified as a high-risk player on March 25 this particular year. But we see in the plot here that the player actually developed a binge behavior from the 17th to the 15th of May. So that was a little while after he was considered at risk. And then the rhetorical question could be, could we have kept this player at a more sustainable level if we have, again, intervened proactively at an earlier stage? If we had the tools that told us that that was an issue, we could automate the messaging. We could also later on potentially give this customer a care call as well. Because obviously it's not ideal seen from the operator's perspective either to have a customer ending up in a complete stop. Of course, in a case where you have a high-risk customer like this, obviously at some point it has to stop anyway. So the final case I'll show today is a 37-year-old male, obviously just in between high risk and very high risk. Again, not the biggest net loss, 1,165 euros over 90 days. But we see that the example here is showing that this customer were actually not playing a very long time with us. So even though we, in this case, have limited data, the algorithm works in a way that we are able to react on strong indicators of harm, even with limited visibility. So that actually also explains the fact that not only do we have a model where we want to detect the long-term behavioral changes going on, but also the real-time behavioral in terms of finding high spend in short period of time. All of this connected to alarms and action view, our to-do list, which we provide to the RD teams, again to utilize the opportunity to automate this and do more RG with the same resources in a smart way. So not only are we able to more individualized and earlier to automate messaging and decision making, we are also able to support the severe cases in the personal care calls. And for those operators who are challenged with that, very lately we announced a partnership with a company called Anonymine, who actually provide care calls made by psychologists. And the idea is that we want to provide an opportunity to solve this problem and to empower the gambling industry to enhance player protection. So that was about it.
Rasmus, thank you very much.
And within the time, thanks.
Perfect. Before you leave the stage, Rasmus, I think we may have one or two questions in Slido that we would like to share with you. We will see it now in front on the screen, if we can have Slido. Rasmus, how do you go from a detailed diagnosis of problematic behavior to a specific tailored intervention? To what extent can this process be automated?
Yeah,
Big question.
that's a great question. Obviously, and that it is a challenge. So you could say first and foremost, it's important for us to say that we are not necessarily doing diagnosis. We are providing the decision-making support in terms of specific customer and customer groups. But obviously, together with the expert panel, mainly consisting of psychologists, we design the intervention in the best way possible. But of course, when I say individualized, obviously that potentially can come for now with a grouping, but more tailored than generic messaging. Obviously, what we also look into as a AI-based company looking into the future is, could it be interesting and relevant for us to use language models like ChatGPT or whatever we see in the future to be able to tailor this even more?
Lots still to be done. Thank you very much, Rasmus.
Thank you.
I have to applaud you.